Hey family, this is Pastor Mike, and we have something special for you today. Empowering conversations that act, A.C.T. Awaken the conscience today. So much has been happening in our world, in our country, politically, socially, culturally. And what I've noticed over the past several months is that so many conversations have been taking place, but all the conversations have not been highly informed, to say the least. And so I was in conversation with Pastor Heaven about hosting a series of conversations designed to do what? Awaken the conscience today. Because we know that many people in this season have a zeal for issues that are political and social and cultural. But like Paul wrote in Romans 10:2, there are many people who have a zeal, but it is not always according to knowledge. In the book of Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6, says something very profound, that my people perish. They are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So these empowering conversations are designed to inform, to empower, to encourage, to make sure we have the right information so that we can make informed decisions and formulate informed opinions according to facts and according to deep, great ideas. And so I'm grateful for this evening and this opportunity to bring to you the first of a series of empowering conversations. And remember, empowering conversations that act, awaken the conscience today. All things political, all things social, and all things cultural. And we're delighted to begin this series with this moment tonight, this event tonight. And I'm grateful to have joining me in these conversations none other than Pastor Heaven Brahani, Pastor Heavy B. Yes. Grateful, as always, to have these conversations. Heaven is someone who is always politically and socially engaged, an activist, and one who truly believes in social justice. And I wanted us to have these conversations in conversation format about the issues of the day. Again, political, social, and cultural. And we're in this season, a few weeks away from the election. And so today we are definitely going to talk about politics as well as a few other things. But I wanted to also shout out, because I'm wearing a shirt today that says Power Voter. I am a power voter, which means for me and so many who believe this, that our power is in our vote. This is a critical election. In my 49 years of living, there has never been a presidential election as critical and as important as this one. And I think it behooves all of us to make sure that we're engaged, that we vote, but more than that, that we're aware of what is going on in our country politically, again, to make informed decisions and to form informed opinions. So Pastor Heaven, why is this season, why is this election so critical, you think?
So funny. I was actually going to put that back onto you as that question, but because one of the things that I really appreciate that you're saying in this moment is that you've had a lot of life experience. I mean, you're a little bit older than I am, but for you to make the statement that this is the most pivotal election of your lifetime. Yeah. And you've seen so much, before I kind of respond, I'm curious to know, based on your wealth of experience and knowledge, why this election? Yeah. Why does this election, and all of the elections that you've seen throughout your lifetime, why is this one the most pivotal?
I think the critical nature of this election is, I think, first, foremost, and principally important because of the person who occupies the White House right now. We have never seen a president quite like this one. I don't think in 2016, 4 years ago, that people anticipated that he would win. I don't even think that Donald Trump thought he would win.
I know he didn't.
No, and I think many people have said that, and I think they're all right. Right. And I think what we haven't seen, yes, we've seen bigots in the White House. We've seen misogynists in the White House. We've seen racists in the White House. I don't think we've seen anyone as destructive in my lifetime as now. Not only destructive, but dangerously destructive, and also politically, socially, just aloof from what is happening in our moment. And we've seen the ramifications of his presidency. We've seen the global impact, the diminishing presence of America in terms of foreign policy. Yeah. We've seen policies that have been inflicted, that have done damage to so many who suffer in our country culturally. And with regard to the pandemic, we now know that the president knew how dangerous it was. He was fully aware of what it could do, but he was more concerned about what was politically expedient for him, what the markets would do if this came out. And he was focused on re-election than thinking about the life of people.
Right.
Now, as I even say this, some 217,000 plus people have died in our country. So this is important because I don't think, again, in my lifetime, I've seen a president this dangerous, this dysfunctional, and this disastrous for the nation.
And I think it's so interesting because I was thinking back to 2016 and, you know, I love my age group. I love us millennials, but there was a movement that was started by a lot of millennials and a lot of different scholars around blacking out your vote. And the idea and the notion was that, like, you know, we're just picking between these two evils. And looking back on it, you're thinking, we truly didn't understand the what evil looked like within a Trump presidency. Yes, we understood evil within someone who, you know, with the Clinton administration, we understood what they were capable of doing policy-wise. But to your point, and what I've, you know, I had a chance to read over a lot of the Atlantic articles that you've had to send our way.
Yes, by the way, I'm always sending articles for the staff to read, so yes.
But no, they're super informative and they're really, really great. And a lot of what the writers are, you know, kind of sharing and saying, and these are people who are Republicans. These are not Democrats. Former, you know, individuals that have worked for George W. Bush. And the reason why they say Trump is so scary is because he lacks an apathy for ethics. He has no morals, nothing. There's nothing that grounds him. There's no compass that he lives by. He is just he himself, which makes it so, you know, we've seen some of the evil things that he's done, whether it's been through, you know, the children that have been in cages and the policies around immigration. And right now in the pandemic, this is what makes our election this moment so pivotal. And even beyond him, there are some other elections, you know, with even, you know, beyond the presidential one, we have Senate, you know, with the senators, we have the reason why we're not able to get a lot of things passed right now is because the Republicans hold the majority in the Senate. That's why Trump never got fully impeached. So Trump was never fully impeached because we don't even have that power within the Senate. And so every time we see things that are happening in the House, we think, oh, the Democrats have it. Yes, the Democrats have the majority in the House, but where the final say is with the Senate. And we have 7 gubernatorial elections coming up as well in this upcoming election. So it's not just the presidency, right, that's important in this time frame, but it's us being able to shift and get power in other places. And right now, you know, people like Mitch McConnell who are aiding and abetting our president. Because it's working in his favor. And so that's why this election is so important. It's not just even Trump. Yes, we have to get Trump out of office because he is the epitome of evil. He is the epitome of just, I mean, if you could call somebody the Antichrist, I mean, he would embody that. But just the other elections that are happening around that will drastically also shift the political landscape of our country.
Yeah, you say that because we want to always make sure these conversations inform those who are watching. And I think one of the things we miss sometimes because we get so fixated, as you said, on presidential elections, that we forget state elections, we forget the elections that take place in local municipalities. All those have consequences in our districts, in our cities. So it's not so much, well, who's going to be president, and not so much even who's going to be governor. Who's going to be your state legislator? Who's going to be the city council person? Who's going to be your state assembly person? I mean, you can go on and on that directly impact, because when you think about federal government and the monies that the federal government disperses, it always funnels to the state down to the local municipalities. So the truth is, decisions that impact us on the ground are more determined by our local elected officials than who's in office as president. Now, let's be clear. Who's in office as president is important, but we can't, we know that. We know the power that the president wields, and we know the capabilities that a president has. We've just never seen them use and wield it in this manner before. But I think when it comes to what is critical, it is, again, not just the presidential election, but it's also who are you voting for your city council, for your mayor, for your district attorney, in some places for your county sheriff. All those elected offices are critical, especially when it comes to how we engage the system in any city we live in, right? So I think that's important.
And I think there's something that you mentioned. What's the number you always tell me of the number of federal judges that Trump has put in office?
I mean, almost 300. I mean, it's over 200 and close to 250, I think, that he has filled, that he's pushed through, aided and abetted by Mitch McConnell. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you raised that. You see, 2016, I remember having numerous conversations and doing a lot of talk radio. Yeah. And I felt that, and I'm a Democrat, so let me just put it out there. I felt that the DNC did not do a good job of creating a narrative, crafting a narrative of what was at stake in the election of 2016. Mm-hmm. They were so convinced that there was no way that Donald Trump could defeat Hillary Clinton that they never created a transcendent narrative, a transcendent narrative that transcended the candidate. So much about elections, and I get it, is about the personality and the particular person running for office. But yes, Hillary Clinton was the most qualified person to ever run for the office of president, which was significant in our country, especially being the first female to receive the nomination of a major political party. Yeah. But there were flaws there. Yeah. There was political baggage there that turned a lot of people off. And they didn't create a narrative beyond her. For example, and you and I have had conversations, and I've had numerous conversations, and it's that what was at stake for me in 2016 was always the judiciary, right? All those federal judgeships that were open and that could be appointed. And then the possibility that the next president would appoint 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices. Right now, Donald Trump is in the process of appointing his 3rd, right? Only 7 presidents in U.S. history have appointed 3 people to the Supreme Court, which changed the landscape. We'll talk about that in a minute. But think about that. So whether you liked Hillary Clinton or not, whether you believed in her politics or not, again, flawed, a lot of baggage. But my belief was that if I had a choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton appointing Supreme Court justices, I'm going to go with Hillary Clinton. Right. Just politically, I'm going to make that. And I don't think people understood that, especially, as you said, many people in your demographic understood what was at stake. Right. Because there were people saying, well, we just ought not vote in protest to vote. No. Yeah. Why? Because as we talk, there are consequences to your political decisions.
You know, and I the consequences have been drastic. And the biggest consequences is it has shaken our democracy. Yeah. You know, the way in which our democracy was created, the founding fathers who created this system of checks and balances are realizing that their system is now flawed.
The thing was, it was always flawed. We've never really overtly seen a president take advantage of the gaps. Yep. That's what it is. And I think we've all, even from some of who we would deem bad presidents, there was still, as you said, there was still some code, per se, an ethic that guided, that there was something. Let me tell you something. I never thought I'd see the day where I would miss George Bush. So just think about where we are. You have people mourning that George Bush is not in office anymore. And to that point, many people believe that George Bush, the second George Bush, was the worst president. And I know he was probably living with that notion to think that public opinion by many people felt that. Yeah. So in many ways, our current president has gotten Bush off the hook. Right? So he's no longer considered the worst. Because there's worse and then there's what we have now. So I think when I think about the consequences in our conversations, a few things. There were people who decided they weren't going to vote because, as you said, they felt the decision was the lesser of 2 evils. The lesser of 2 evils. And I don't want to choose any evil, so therefore I abstain. One group. There's another group that said, why do we have to vote for these 2 political parties? Why are they the only options?
Right. Let's create our own.
Let's create our own, or let's vote third party. Right. Mm-hmm. Most third party candidates traditionally hurt the Democratic base. They usually hurt. Yep. All right. So You had people in 2016 that voted for Jill Stein, I believe.
Jill Stein, yeah. Yep.
Jill Stein was candidate.
Yep. I remember I could name a couple right now off the top of my head.
Who voted for it?
Who voted?
Don't name them. But who were committed? Who
were committed and openly, and not only were they committed, but they were openly trying to shift the demographic towards Jill Stein.
Yeah.
And it's one thing if that's your own prerogative, but when something is that, something such that's that monumental, and that critical, for you then to take that narrative and that knowledge, and as a scholar, your responsibility is to inform the people in the right way.
Yeah.
That is malpractice.
I'm glad you said it, because there were certain scholars who were saying this.
Scholars.
Academics.
Academics. And what's interesting and what frustrates me
who thought that was a thought experiment. I'll leave that there.
And they have real life consequences for real life people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times what we don't realize, and you say this to me all the time, is that our bubble and our circle is actually, it's not inclusive of everybody.
No.
It's not inclusive of the entire, we're not thinking of everybody. And if we truly thought of everybody in that moment, we would have realized, yes, maybe the Trump presidency, as somebody who's as a middle class individual or as a scholar, whoever it is not going to impact you in the same way that it's going to impact, say, the lowliest person on the totem pole.
Yeah, people who are poor,
impoverished.
And people who are, as we always like to say politically, trying to make ends meet. That there are people, no matter who's president, will not necessarily be impacted.
Yeah.
And we don't always say that. I don't always hear people say that because maybe it's not good political etiquette.
Yeah.
But there are people in this country, no matter who's president, won't necessarily be impacted. But for the work that we do, we can't think about the people who are not impacted. We're always thinking about those who are marginalized, who are relegated to the margins of our culture, whose very life and being is ostracized.
Yeah.
It's the people that, in our word, that we found Jesus gravitating towards and working and ministering among, who are the undercounted and the overlooked. The consequences of our inaction or bad choices impact so many people like that.
Right.
So when you go back to, again, that group of people, one, the people who said we're not going to vote because we don't want to pick either. Two, we're going to vote for Jill Stein. And then you had a very interesting group of people who voted for Barack Obama. Some twice, felt disappointed, and therefore felt that a better option than Hillary Clinton, because she was part of their ideas of the regime, was Donald Trump. I saw a conversation on the news the other day with some suburban women, because that's the target group now.
That's the target group.
Who voted for Trump and had like buyer's remorse, right? And regretted they did that. Well, the fact of the matter is, regret is wonderful and buyer's remorse is real. But we see right now, we would say things like, this is life and death. This has been life and death.
This has been life and death.
This has been life and death. That what we saw in this president and have seen has meant the death of not thousands or tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
And so I say that to say what? Our political decisions have major consequences.
Yeah. And to add to that with the pandemic, they spoke about how Trump had rolled back a lot of funds that were being put in place by the Obama administration to ensure that if there was a pandemic, to ensure if there was a global health outbreak, that there would be things that would be put in place to protect the American people. And Trump removed all of those things. And so to your point, when we say things like, what's at stake? Yes, maybe you as an individual, maybe your income won't drastically, but you won't die. Like, this pandemic has shown us that there are other dangers out there beyond, making sure that people have the, necessities, but there are other dangers out there that our politicians are supposed to be protecting us from.
Yeah.
And so when they're not protecting us from those things, then we get to see and we're exposed and we start to realize just how important the right leader is.
Yeah.
And in this moment, in this pandemic, and I know people say, they question God, but I think 2020 and this pandemic go hand in hand because it is exposed and it has given us like clear vision to see all the ways in which our democracy has been flawed. We have come, this is a reckoning moment for us.
Yeah.
And as a country, we have to reckon and we have to make it right.
Yeah.
And so the way that we can make it right is by this first moment, is by choosing the right leader in office.
Yeah, no, I was on a radio show the other day and someone called in and said, they were upset in terms of the power that Mitch McConnell has right now. And they say, we need to do something. We need to change the laws. We need to do something to make sure that that someone doesn't have this kind of power. And I said two things. One, you have to be careful when you want to change the democratic process because you don't like who's in position. Because
say that.
setting a precedent can be problematic.
Yes.
Right? So if you lose a race, you can't want to change necessarily the rules because you don't like who won.
Right.
Because then when you win, someone will try to change the rules on you. So I don't like that. And what I said to the person, I said, there's a way you can do this. You vote.
You vote, yeah.
Voting, I'm going to keep going to the shirt because I'm a power voter.
Power voter.
that you use your weapon. Now let's go particular with this. Let's be even more detailed with this. We have been experiencing not even covert attempts, but overt attempts at voter suppression. Oh, yeah. Especially within that impacts people of color in general and African Americans in particular.
Yeah.
Amazing effort placed in trying to suppress the vote. Why do you think so much effort is put into that? To suppress votes? I mean, it's obvious, but I think the former John Lewis, who was really emphasizing the power. Why would they take away your vote if it didn't matter? And I think that is the best response, as opposed to explaining it. Why are they working so hard if it didn't matter? Precisely. I use the analogy, if you're a person who studies like pugilism, boxing, I had to use a big word for pugilism.
I was like, wait, what?
But if you think about that, if you're preparing for a fight, you don't win the fight by studying your opponent's weaknesses. Yeah. You win the fight by studying your opponent's strength. Yep. And you try to counter their strength so that their strength doesn't have as much of an impact in the fight. If so much effort is being used to suppress our votes, that means that those who are constructing mechanisms to suppress the vote understand that voting is what? The strength.
Right.
The strength.
Yeah.
You can go as far back as, generations ago when efforts were made to suppress Black vote, to intimidate, to scare people. Or you had these vile voting tests, how many black jelly beans in the jar. I mean, you can go on and on. And there was an attempt to suppress the vote because of the power of the vote. And when African Americans got the power to vote without any encumbrance, without the intimidation, without all of that, you saw the impact across the country. 1968, I remember, was kind of this first national election where you saw the power of the Black vote, right? With the Voting Rights Act and all the laws put in place statewide and federally to ensure that everyone has an opportunity, one person, one vote. So voting is a power. Right. That is a superpower. Right. That is how the people bring about change, and that is by voting. And when you do not do that, you let elected officials off the hook, right? And you also vanquish your own power to influence change.
That's a really good point. I actually have a question to ask you, and there's been a lot of conversation. People often say, particularly when it comes to the Black community, and in the Atlantic, in several articles have talked about a lot of the voters that got purged in the last election in Georgia in particular were Black. And as we know, there have been over, I think, 200,000 people that have already casted their votes starting in Georgia. Like, people are going to the polls because they understand the importance of this election. And one, to your point, they also understand voter suppression. What do you say to people who consistently say that there is still a lingering of apathy within our community around voting?
Well, I think, at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to eradicate apathy, entirely. I think apathy comes from a place of damage, of woundedness, of feeling that your very being doesn't matter. And if your being doesn't matter, then your vote really doesn't matter. I think it also comes from not seeing the direct connection between your vote and what happens to you, your family politically. There are things that happen to us that are based on political decisions, but we don't always feel like our individual vote can impact that or change it, because the issues and the problems and the crises are so daunting and so big, we shrink back in that moment and we say, how can my vote make a difference? Well, it's not your vote alone. It's my vote. It's your vote. It's the vote of those who are watching. It's the vote of countless communities. They add up. When you begin to, I'll go back. It's a saying that, belief in oneself can be infectious. It spreads. I think believing in our political power can be just as infectious. It can spread. And as long as we're vigilant about it and talking about it, listen, I've been at FCBC 16 years. And in that 16 years, there are many things we've been able to do. I've also run for office. But I've always believed in the power of our vote. And I've always seen it as a strength, not a weakness. And I've always said it's a strength because they're trying to take it away. And we have to embrace that. So one, we accept that there's always going to be a demographic of the population that will be disengaged. But there are many people who will be engaged and will get engaged once they have the right information. That is why we're doing these conversations. Not just this month, but we'll have these empowering conversations as long as we're here, because I always want to make sure that people are informed. What's at stake? What are the consequences? What's the information? I mean, because there are a lot of myths about voting, a lot of falsehoods, and a lot of inaccuracies. I'm gonna give you a classic example of how sometimes the far right spins this. So I was on the radio show on Tuesday, and a caller called in, and it was a white man, and he said that I won't vote for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden because they believe in killing babies. That's what he said. And I said, wait a minute. And he didn't say outright abortion. He said killing babies. So my response, I said, well, freeze. I said, because that narrative is not true. And it is propaganda that is designed to shape and cultivate a narrative that you're using to justify not supporting Senator Harris and Vice President Biden. I said, tell me at what point in the campaign or otherwise did they say they believe in killing babies? If they have not said that's not true. He said, well, they support abortion. I said, no, they don't support abortion. They support choice. A woman's right to choose. I do not support abortions myself, but I do not believe that we should legislate a woman's choice. So I believe in the choice that a woman has a right to make. That is different than saying, I believe in killing babies. Because I do not believe in abortion, but I believe in a woman's right. We are a country built on laws and rights. And when you start pulling rights away, it's a slippery slope. When do they stop? When do the rights stop? We were as citizens, we have the right to vote. We had to fight as Black people in this country to make sure that that right we had would be enforced. We were counted citizens, but were always viewed as second-class citizens. We had to fight to make sure our citizenship was honored and our humanity was dignified, right? So choice and rights are big in this country. And when you start saying, well, I'm pro-life, well, first of all,
there's a lot of ways that you can describe being pro-life.
The pro-life argument, because many people who are anti-abortion are pro-death penalty. All right?
And also if you really want to talk about pro-life is the quality of someone's life. Right? So it's not just someone being born. But ensuring that they have the quality of life. So if they don't have health care, then they're not really living. Right? If they don't have food on their table, they're not really living.
There you go.
If they don't have clothes, if they don't have education, if they don't have the basic necessities, they're not really living. And so a lot of people within those camps who use and co-opt Christian language and have co-opted a religion, right, to emphasize and to shift the narrative. And that's why a lot of times when you talk to a lot of Trump supporters, it's almost like you're talking to a wall. Because you realize that, and then there was an article that you had me to read, but that there is an idea of how they think society should be and how the world should be for them. And anything that chooses to threaten that must be exterminated and extinguished.
Absolutely. And many people, and you brought it up, some of the religious right, are two issues, publicly two issues, abortion and LGBTQ rights. And going back to what you said, I love what you said, because if you're pro-life, as I told the caller yesterday, don't just be pro-life in utero,
Yep.
in the embryo. Don't be pro-life in the womb. Because that same child that you want to live, to survive,
Yes.
may be born into poverty,
Mm-hmm.
may be born into homelessness.
Yeah.
Care about that. So you're pro-life, anti-abortion, but you support policies that deepen, right, the poverty that many people in this country experience,
Yeah.
the lack of access to, as you said, basic necessities. You know, and what we also has, language has a way of shaping opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'll give you an example. It was one of the late night hosts, I can't remember who it was, Jimmy Fallon, someone like that, who was trying to show, I think he was trying to show the ignorance of many people around these issues, but language is important. So he asked people, some people who clearly were either Republican or anti-President Obama, he said,
I like that you make that distinction, anti-President Obama.
yeah, because they, you don't have to be, just not just a Republican, you're anti-President Obama, which is a lot of things. But, and here was a question that the person asked the person. Do you support Obamacare? It was absolutely not. I think it's wrong. Well, do you support the Affordable Care Act? Absolutely.
I do remember seeing that.
You remember that?
Yeah.
So watch this. That let me know this is about Obama.
Yeah, it's about Obama.
And many people in this country supported getting rid of Obamacare,
right?
Not realizing they were voting against their interests or taking positions against their interests.
Yeah.
So it was masterful how they shrouded the Affordable Care Act in Obamacare and not the Affordable Care Act because people thought it was two different things.
Yeah.
Well, right now you see the language is ACA, Affordable Care Act, not Obamacare per se, because now it's coming to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right? And many people who voted for Trump, who made it clear he was going to repeal Obamacare as best he could, Mitch McConnell, who made it clear he wanted to try to eradicate Obamacare, many people who supported them, who voted for Trump, will find themselves, if the Supreme Court does what I think the Supreme Court will do, will find themselves, yes, big Trump supporters without health care and without access to health care. So again, I think it is making sure that we help people, not just, I mean, we're small parts of this larger effort, but to inform people, to have these real conversations so people understand what's going on, because a lot of what you see politically are smoke and mirrors right now.
Yeah.
And we miss that. So, yeah, what are your thoughts now about the Supreme Court? Because I know we don't have much time left.
We don't have much time, and I know we could talk forever about this. You know, we do that often. But you know, this particular Supreme Court nomination above the other two feel even more disrespectful than the other. One, because she asked. Judge Ginsburg asked that we wait till the next president comes into office so that they could make a decision that was accurate and a reflection of what the people wanted. So for Trump to overstep the wishes of somebody who has passed away, who has given and committed her life to this work, feels just like a slap in the face.
Well, he doesn't care because you already said he doesn't have the capacity to be empathetic.
Doesn't have the capacity. Yeah. But there are probably two really big issues that I see with this particular nomination, which is the ACA, where we see with the Affordable Care Act. She's written a lot of it, extensive. She wrote, I think, a journal article around her position and viewing, and pretty much stated outright that the ACA was unconstitutional. Now, we know yesterday she did not want to publicly say that. She kept kind to veer and, use very... This week, yesterday, she was using very... and it was actually... Senator Kamala Harris, right, who pushed her on the ACA and pushed and pushed and pushed and said that there are thousands of people that will be hurt by this decision. And so what I appreciate is that Kamala Harris was putting into perspective sort of the weight of this moment, right? Yeah. So yes, we might like this person. She might present well. She might, say to us, on television that she doesn't know her position, but she's written it.
Yeah, she knows.
She shows every judge, and they said this yesterday on CNN, has a history. They have a pattern. Yeah. They have a belief system. And so we know Roe v. Wade is going to be up for,
if it comes up, we know where she stands.
We know where she stands. But the biggest one, I think, is the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
And when we know that there are the majority of...
and LGBTQ
rights. But the majority of people that benefit from government insurance as well as the ACH are people within our community.
Yeah.
And so that makes this moment even more pivotal to know that there is somebody who's threatening our rights and our abilities to be able to stay on your parents' plan.
Yeah.
If you are a millennial right now and you are under the age of 26, you are potentially going to lose your rights and your coverage. You wouldn't have to go and pay for your own health insurance.
Yeah.
And I remember the beauty of waiting. Even though you graduate, you don't make money.
Yeah.
So being able to stay on your health and your parents' health insurance plan was a huge deal until you were 26. And so these are just small rights, covering people with pre-existing health conditions, right?
Like me.
Like you.
Yeah.
And thank God you have good health insurance. But if you didn't and you had your pre-existing health conditions, you would financially be overcome.
Yeah.
You would not be able to care for yourself.
Yeah.
And so these are the things that are, I would say, when it comes to this particular nomination, are highly at risk because we know that the pendulum is going to swing one way.
And I'll go back where I started in many ways, that there are consequences to these decisions. Here my comments about the Supreme Court. Before Justice Ginsburg died, many of the decisions were 5-4.
Yeah,
right?
5. Yeah.
Sometimes the Chief Justice Roberts, sided with liberals.
Yeah.
And I know it infuriated many Republicans and people on the right. One thing that Chief Justice made clear, is that he didn't want this to be a political court.
Right.
And I think that's part of the impetus as to why on some occasions, according to the law, he sided with liberals. We have in this country been able, on some levels, to survive 5-4 decisions across the board. Now, 2013, when we saw the dismantling of the Voters' Rights Act.
Gutted the Voting Rights Act.
By killing Section 4. We also, the Citizens United, that said corporations are individuals, that almost you have this unlimited amount of money that can be given towards PACs. And in that very moment, when Citizens United decision came down, it was not as if democracy was undermined and dismantled in that moment, because now money always was an influence, but now it really controls. Political decisions have consequences. So now Donald Trump is the president. He's put 2 justices in the Supreme Court. We still maintain the 5-4 decision. We have survived, even though there's been damage done to the Voting Rights Act, damage done by Citizens United, as well as some other things. We've survived 5-4, 6-3.
We won't be able to survive.
Can't survive that.
Yeah.
So that means there'll be changes that will last at least a generation. If they come up. And that is why our decisions that we make have to be informed. Our decisions that we make, we have to know the consequences. If we engage or disengage, we must know the consequences. And
Can I add the biggest consequences is, as we know, is the peaceful transition of power. Right? And we talked about this, that we are in a scary moment when a president won't clearly state that he will commit to a peaceful transition of power, that he is willing to
and won't commit
and put our country in a place of limbo.
Yeah.
And yesterday, they asked her point blank, they said, if we're put in this position, where do you stand? She said, one, that she wouldn't commit to recusing herself from the case, or she wouldn't commit to a decision either way.
And basically, what she was basically saying was that I haven't been faced with that situation yet, so I don't know. Well, that's not true. You know where you stand. If there's supposed to be a peaceful transition of power from every presidency to the next president, that has been standing. You know where you stand.
Right.
And to say that means that you don't want to say where you stand for fear of the person who nominated you will feel some kind of way, or you actually support this particular president who clearly won't make it easy.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll be honest, Mitch McConnell said that there will be a peaceful transition of power. I believe him. And people say, well, why? I mean, look what he's done. But look what he's done. Everything Mitch McConnell wanted to accomplish, he's been able to accomplish because Donald Trump has been a distraction.
Yeah.
He is the distraction. We get fixated on him while all these judges were confirmed that we weren't aware of. He has been this. So here it is. He served a purpose already for Mitch McConnell. So they are not into protecting him if he loses this race. So I think this is a pivotal election. That's why it's important for you to vote. It's important for you to make sure you take your vote seriously. You need to be a power voter in this season, and we will make sure we do our job which is to, as much as we can, to have these conversations to inform you of what is critical, what are the critical issues. Today, we talked about politics. The next few sessions, we'll talk about politics and culture because we have a major election coming up. I said the most important in my lifetime, November 3rd. Now, there may be some of you who are watching who may want us to address certain issues, who may want us to answer certain questions. And so how can people ask questions, Pastor Heaven?
Yes, so if you have some questions that you want us to answer over the next couple of conversations, please send me an email at hbarhana@fcbcnyc.org. Once again, it's hbarhana@fcbcnyc.org, and you may just see us answering your question in our next conversation series.
Good. Thank you. Well, this was great, family. I hope you enjoyed it. This was really just us talking about the things we talk about, politics, mainly culture. And then maybe people will say, well, hold on. Those are pastors. Why are we having these conversations? Well, beyond that, we are disciples. Yeah. We are followers of the carpenter. And I think you cannot claim to follow the carpenter and be disengaged from decisions that impact people and people's lives. And what we've seen over these past 4 years is the danger and how detrimental it is to the lives of people when you have the wrong people in office. They don't always have to agree. We don't always have to agree, but the one thing we should agree on is the well-being of the citizens of this country, especially those who are the most vulnerable among us. We've seen what has happened when you have a president who doesn't have the capacity to be empathetic, who does not care for the vulnerable among us. We've seen it legislatively. We've seen it in the policy that's been put forth. We definitely have seen it during this pandemic. And so we hope that we'll be able to continue to bring you these empowering conversations that awaken the conscience today. So until next time, thank you, peace and blessings. And don't forget, 3 things you got to do: live, love, serve. Peace and blessings.